Hello, my peeps, and welcome back to Passionate People and Preposterous Peeves. I am still your host, Ike, and before you get too excited for this Season 3 episode, I'd like to just take a moment and say thanks for being here and giving this pod a listen. It means a lot to me that you chose to use your precious time and give me and my guest your ears. Now, if after all this awesomeness, you still have the wherewithal, it'd be really cool if you shared this with someone you think would like it, or just subscribe yourself if you already haven't. I would be mucho appreciative. I don't know. I'm not that bilingual. Anyway, so a little bit about what's going on behind the scenes here. I am working on making yet another podcast because I am a podcast addictionado. That's not a real word. I've got a problem. And the only solution is more podcast. This podcast is going to be a lot lighter on my weekly intake, as I plan to make it a 10-minute magic interview podcast. Very expedient experience. More on that as it gets more done. I don't know. I haven't even come up with a name yet. There are some in the works, but troubleshooting it, getting opinions, wanting to give this the best possibility at becoming kind of streamlined, going to the mainstream. As much as I love this podcast, the name is a mouthful, and a lot of people, I don't think they forget it, but it's kind of like addles their brain when they hear it. Never rebranding it. Love the name. Fuck the haters. I don't care. In more soul-searching news, hold on. Preface. So I went out and watched the Barbie movie. Would recommend. It is a hilarious mind-boggler and fantastic feast for the eyes. Greta Gerwig does it again. She's amazing. Margot Robbie, always a banger. Ryan Gosling, dreamboat. Just all around bang city. Would recommend. Another movie that I watched 2 movies this week about skateboarding, even though I have stepped on a skateboard like twice in my life, and it was, I believe, both times rather tragic. Watched the Bones Brigade documentary shortly after watching the Till the Wheels Fall Off Tony Hawk documentary. Both of which really shook me, and I think in a good way, very much, had me introspective, had me just really doing some deep dwelling within the recesses of my mind when it came to passion and life decisions. And I have decided not to pursue writing intentionally moving forward. Meaning that, if it hits me or whatever, I'm not going to be like, I'm not a writer, I'm not going to write. But as I did come to LA to write, and it was always kind of something that I meant to do, but almost never did, except when I was, forcing myself to do it like it was a chore. Upon talking to my very wise father, talking to fantastic past guest and great friend Lucas Frank, and just doing some soul searching upon watching these documentaries and really thinking about it. It's like, I don't know if that's what I want to do. And there was this interesting idea that I had when that came up when I was speaking with my father the other night, where growing up, there was this idea that if you were good at something, you owed it to the world and yourself, but especially the world, to share this gift. Who are you to not do this thing and flourish? And I realized that subconsciously I'd let that kind of sit on my shoulder and make me feel like I was forced to do this, because I am a good writer. I've been told as much by many people. I haven't put nearly that amount of effort forward, but I have the, early budding kind of aspects of being a good writer. But that's not what being good at something is, truly. Like, if you want to be great at something, it's not about the soil, it's not about the seed, it's about the whole process. You have to have a good seed to start. That's rather important, or it's very helpful at the least. You have to want it bad enough, you have to be tenacious, and then you have to get lucky. At the moment, I have like maybe one of those things. That's good, that's fine, it's a great place to start. But if you're not tenacious, if you don't want it bad, it doesn't matter. That's not something that you should be ashamed of, having the beginnings of. Arguably, the latter two things, being tenacious and wanting it bad enough, are more important. And I just don't have those things. And that's fine. It's not a bad thing. It's not a blemish, as I once would think. But it is something to be aware of. And so I don't know if any of you, maybe this is helpful for some of you, I hope. But for me, looking inward, crying a lot, and being very angry about it, and talking to friends who are willing to listen and give me their ears, it really helped me kind of liberate myself from this yoke that I had placed upon myself. So for the time being, that aspect of my life is being very much, set aside. And I'm going to focus on talking into a microphone a lot more. As I love it. I want to get better at it, and I enjoy doing it. Things that I don't enjoy doing that I do have to do, however, regardless of want to or not. Got 1 week left till I have to go back to work. Where'd all the time go? I had a whole entire summer break, and now it's over, basically. Fuck! But, yeah. I feel like there's got to be a word for that experience in time where it's something is suddenly over that took forever. You have that, like, where you go on a trip, right? Doesn't matter how long the trip is, I feel like. In my experience, you go on any amount of time, past probably like 3 days or like a week. You go on any kind of trip of that kind of magnitude. The last day of the trip, or like towards the tail end of it, it feels like everything happened and nothing happened. Time is simultaneously too fast and too slow. If anybody knows a good word for that, please hit me up on Twitter at twitter.com/likeikes or at likeikes. I don't know how the best way to say that. And or you can just email me at passionandpeevespodcast@gmail.com. I would love to know if there's actually a word for that, because I have that feeling constantly, and I would love to have to describe it and just say a word. English. I continue watching Haikyuu. The show is so good. Can't recommend it enough. And that's part of the reason I'm kind of like focusing more on doing a magic podcast and stuff like that. Same thing with the Bones Brigade and the Till the Wheels Fall Off. That it really instilled to me the beauty of following your passion, following your bliss. Find what you like and just go. Don't worry. As long as you're not, burning bridges financially or otherwise, don't worry about the ramifications as much as worry about missing out. That's kind of the thought. That sounds a little bit more selfish, but this idea of being fraught with these long-term questions when life is so fleeting kind of seems like a fool's errand. It sounds like a great way to have a beautiful casket with nobody to attend the funeral. So with that morbid note, my lovely guest today was Chris KAPICA. Chris is another friend that I met through magic, but we talk about so much more than that. In fact, I don't think we talk about that at all, because his passion supersedes that in a magnificently marvelous way. So please, without further ado, take it away, past self. All right, folks. Today we have someone who has played piano with an inebriated Tame Impala and Lady Gaga, lost in a game of picket basketball to a denim-laden Wynton Marsalis, and triumphed in the highly lauded Palm Beach 80s prom costume contest. It's Chris KAPICA!
What's up, fam?
Not much, bruh. How we doing on this fine 88-degree summer sunny Thursday?
So we're starting off with weather discussion. I'm into it. The East Coaster in me does not fare well above 80 degrees. I basically turn into like a menopausal woman, getting hot flashes and stuff, and it's not pretty.
Well, on the plus side, this West Coaster boy also does not like it when it's above 70 degrees, so you're in good company.
All right, fair enough.
What life decision are you the most proud of making?
I mean, if I don't say marrying my wife, I get in a lot of trouble here. So, if I had to pick something else, I guess just trying to make my passion my career. There were a lot of different routes I could have seen my life going. Pursuing music as a vocation is definitely something that's tricky and took some convincing of my folks. But, high school, I'm batting around ideas like I'm going to go into biochemical engineering or something like this. Mm-hmm. That seems cool. But of course would not have been nearly as fulfilling for me. And I've just been really fortunate to be in a position now where I'm able to be creative and help people. And it's been a dream.
Well, as you have a occupation and the ocular capacity that is music, perhaps you have a poor man luxury that you still enjoy to this day.
A poor man luxury that I enjoy to this day. Let me think about that one. There's just something. I mean, if I'm understanding the question correctly, something that's just simple, no frills, just
like top ramen, a walk in the park, matinee showings. What's it? They're not really around anymore, but there used to be this thing I remember seeing at like local theaters where they would play old movies for cheap. There's a term for that, and I don't know what it is. But like that, something that, was kind of like a treat for yourself when you were, for somebody that's working at McDonald's or, living like in college with no job and just, a grant or, just like what the Pell Grant would afford them at, for dinner.
Sure. So I guess in terms of food stuffs, I mean, I'm definitely a peanut butter junkie.
Do tell.
I mean, I'm one of these sickos who, if you remember, I think it was a New York Times article a while ago that they basically just evangelized about peanut butter and pickle sandwiches. And it's something that, basically my entire life, all of elementary school, I grew up eating peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, obviously.
Like a good Christian American.
Yeah, real talk. And, and then fast forward to a, good Christian broke musician American, post grad school and stuff like this. I would make these probably 3-inch thick peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. Right. And so I just kind of can't shake the habit. Sure, I'm not maybe doing peanut butter and jelly sandwiches anymore, but, banana and peanut butter is just the ideal start to everything. And I'm trying to win more people over on the peanut butter and pickle sandwich idea. The problem is
what kind of pickle are we doing? Because there's a different pickle.
For the sandwich, probably just like a bread and butter pickle, I would think. Okay. Just something that has enough acidity to sort of balance out the umami of the peanut butter. You don't want to get too funky, I think, in this, because if I'm just eating pickles out of the jar, I'm eating, really spicy, funky pickles, But then again, I guess if I had to think about like my favorite pickle, wow, we're going here already.
Yeah.
Back in New York, my old college roommate introduced me to this pickle company, Bubby's, and they're just, I think, the creme de la creme of pickles. I don't think to this day I've had a better out of the jar pickle.
Nothing's better than Bubby's. All right. Well, as a big time peanut butter man myself, I will have to try, and a lover of the bread and butter pickle, I will have to cave and give this the old college try.
I'm telling you, going with an open mind, and I think you will be pleasantly surprised that these two sort of presumably incompatible things, blend harmoniously in the mouth.
I don't know about an open mind, but I will definitely give it a go. Okay. What is your, before we move on, what is your go-to, since we, kind of singled out Bubby's, what is your go-to peanut butter of choice?
I mean, Sure, you could do all your kind of artisanal peanut butters and stuff. You go to the farmer's market and get some, handcrafted thing. But I'm not too hard to please when it comes to peanut butter. Like I'll just literally just get the Kroger brand, peanut butter because to me, it's peanuts and salt. You don't have to overthink this.
Yeah.
You don't have to put any weird shit in it, like chia seeds or whatever. Like forget all
Oh
that.
God, no. Yeah.
Let's just go back to basics. I'm a suburban guy by upbringing. Let's not get it twisted. Peanut butter is good on its own. You don't need
Yes.
to go through the whole rigmarole to make it fancy.
Exactly. I mean, Mr. Edison or Edson, the man who made peanut butter, he didn't get it wrong.
No, he nailed it.
He nailed
A
it. Got it right
plus.
the first time. What's your best or perhaps most memorable piece of advice you've ever gotten?
Wow. I've gotten a lot of great advice. I've gotten a lot of memorable advice. Some things that have stuck with me. Because again, I could, just give you a bunch of platitudes that, that anybody could give you, but some maybe anecdotal ones. I remember going on my high school wind ensemble field trip. We had a really good wind band when I was in high school, and we would do kind of regional competitions and stuff. And so it was sort of a sleepaway thing, and I think Virginia Beach. And I'm from like southeastern New York State, like about an hour and a half north of the city. So, it's a substantial drive. And, we're going to be there for a few days. And, I'm maybe 14, 15, something like this. And my mother, is making sure that I've got everything. She's being the typical helicopter mom that she was, God bless her. And so she says, say goodbye to your father, before he leaves. It's the ass crack of the morning, and he comes out. My father's, now a retired chief of police, right? So and put that sort of image in your mind, a little rough around the edges, a little bit crass,
Yeah.
And so he just kind of shakes my hand, looks me dead in the face, and just said, just don't impregnate anybody. I said, well, hey, I mean, that's pretty sound advice. But, in terms of, like music advice, I remember my first composition lesson because I studied composition in school. And my teacher, sadly, who's no longer with us, absolute titan of the industry, a guy named Chris Rouse. I go in there and I give him, some whatever I had it as an 18-year-old. And he just kind of looks at it, just says, okay, whatever, we'll worry about this another time. I'm going to give you, some just quick tips and then, I'll see you next week. And so my first lesson was like 5 minutes or something. He basically said, for any music orchestral nerds out there, he basically said, clarinet and cello go well with anything. That was tip one. So I said, okay, I'm a clarinet player, so that's good to know.
Sweet.
Basically, always write for twice as many French horns as you think you need. So because there's just weird acoustical things that happen, where, for every two French horn players, it's about equal volume as one trumpet player. So in terms of brass balance and stuff like this. And then he said, don't write swing music for strings. So he says, basically because violin players are just generally not on the level, they're not studying like playing hip hop and jazz and stuff like this. Of course, there are violin players that can absolutely do this and they're terrific to work with. But the typical violin pedagogy, being let's study the classics and, everything is very sort of square and, metronomic and, I mean, they're of course incredible talents, but if you want to do something a little bit more crossover, he said, steer clear of that for like violins, violas, cellos, stuff like that. And that was my first lesson. And,
That's
awesome.
awesome.
I studied with him for 5 years and, with really powerful presence and really kind of helped me figure out a lot of sort of artistic, discovery stuff. And I owe him a lot for that.
That's so awesome. I love the kind of like staying away from the platitudes, like you're saying. That's like such a great thing for to like to cut through the din and really like give somebody good advice is when it's so not necessarily obscure but like direct and personal. Like that's something you're never going to forget, like right, wrong, or otherwise, just because it's so unique.
Oh, it was just,
you know,
and it was laser specific. I mean, like,
yeah,
clearly the guy has thought about
double
this.
the French horn, and it's like
clearly
this man knows.
He's thought about this, right? I mean, of course,
Yeah,
he's, he was one of the preeminent, modern orchestral composers, and that's what I was there to study. And so,
Awesome.
of course, he, has figured out a lot of things in his many years at the time. And so, but for some reason, he just had these things to impart to an impressionable 18-year-old that he basically never met before. And so he must have really felt strongly about it.
So, talking about imparting information, do you have a favorite myth that you like to commonly dispel, or you find yourself at least most commonly dispelling?
I'd say, I guess a little bit of background, so my day gig is as the dean of a little pop music college in Pasadena. So I do a lot of teaching. And so I have a lot of students coming in, who maybe come from untraditional music backgrounds. They're not these people who've been taking lessons since the womb or anything. They're not those typical types. There are a lot of people who just, maybe learned how to produce music on YouTube. That's just kind of how people get information now. And so,
Sure.
They might be incredibly skilled. They might have incredible artistic vision, but, they haven't maybe gone through the proper, or not proper, the codified music education system. So you're not learning the vocabulary of music and stuff like this. You're not learning some of the sort of fundamental techniques. They sort of maybe skirt those steps, and so a requirement for all incoming music students at basically any music institution, and ours is no exception. You have to take something called music theory. And, music theory is basically, for a lot of people, an incredibly difficult, intimidating thing because maybe they've spent their whole lives just appreciating, enjoying music, sort of being attuned to the feelings music evokes. They're experiencing music from a very visceral place and not necessarily a cerebral place. So for a lot of people coming in, music theory is this sort of bugaboo that they've gotten it in their mind that it's this really scary, very math-laden, formulaic sort of thing. I have to count this many keys between these notes to make this kind of chord and stuff. Yeah, there is some of that. But so the myth I would probably dispel for any people considering furthering their music education is music theory is literally trying to understand why the music you listen to works and why it's great. So sometimes you're talking about specific musical structures that, yes, you have to put them together. It's this note plus this note plus this note to make this chord sort of thing. Sometimes you talk about, the melody comes from this particular scale or whatever, and you have to learn the sort of combinations of notes that create that sound. But sometimes it's just talking about, okay, this production technique that they used, punches up the excitement at this moment of the song. Or, you might be talking about how a lyric is interpreted musically or something like this, And so there's so many aspects of music theory that I think people, when they hear the term, they sort of stop at the number crunching element of it and the memorization element of it. And they, let's say, don't see how far you could take it. It's like they stop at learning the ABCs and they get a chance to be Proustian in their, discussion of music when you really use the vocabulary and start really getting under the hood of what makes all this stuff special. And so that's the hill I'll die on is music theory, basically, and how important it is, and that it's not scary if you approach it with the right mindset.
All right, so hot take territory, since we're kind of bumping up against it. Is there such a thing as bad music, or is it just not of your preference?
Wow. How much time have you got?
All right, if it's going to be that much, we'll get to it in the main segment.
Well,
So
let me think about that.
Yeah.
Bad music. I think there is ineffective music. I think there is music that maybe, because again, the whole point of making something is it doesn't have to just exist in a mausoleum, right? People encounter music. Music is a temporal art form. So it's not like a painting that you could just kind of take your time and look at every corner and kind of move around, and you don't have to start from left to right sort of thing. You have to experience music from second zero to the end. And so that is unique to human experience. So you have to consider that people are listening to music. People come with all this baggage, right? They have lived experience.
Don't I know it?
Oh, yeah. They have lived experiences. They have music that they've heard, music that they have not heard or been exposed to. They have certain maybe extra musical connections to music, as in they associate a specific song with a specific moment in their life or something like this. So every listener is different. That said, there are certain empirical acoustical qualities about music that are universal, right? An A440 means you are sending a sound that's vibrating 440 times per second, right? There are certain universal aspects of music that go beyond how somebody experiences it. So when you're making something, you have to sort of account for both of these things. How is the human being, on average, going to experience your music, and how does it vibrate in space and stuff like this? And again, music can exist in different spaces. If you're listening through it through your Apple earbuds, it's going to be different than hearing it through giant stacks at Coachella, right? So there's so many factors that go into play. And so there will be times where maybe you as a music maker are trying to create a certain effect because either you think the audience is going to react a certain way, or you think that the listening environment and the sort of the vibration and stuff like this is going to land a certain way. And so you might combine certain instruments a certain way. You might choose a certain combination of notes that you think will create a certain sound. Things like this. You might think that the listener is going to move a certain way when you write things at a certain tempo. All this sort of stuff can factor into your decision making. So if you have a clearly stated goal in your music, there are certain techniques that enhance or detract from the effectiveness of what you're making. So I might listen to one of my students' tunes or something like this and say, I get what they're trying to do here. They're trying to, let's say, build up to this really big, dramatic, cathartic explosion, sort of thing. Maybe the pacing is wrong, because they get to the payoff too fast. Maybe the setup chords that they use don't have the chord that they arrive on land as hard because of the context in which it is. Like, all these things can come into play. And that's why, giving feedback is like basically the biggest part of my job. And it's something I love doing. And it's something that, I'm always having to react to new stuff all the time because people are always making stuff. And so, of course, I'm one opinion, but, I think there are certain things that, people will tell you that are pretty universal, as in try to sing in tune, and what does that mean? That's like going to be different depending on this, the region that your music comes from. We come from a specific tuning system and stuff like this, but then the blues talks about the stuff in between. That, again, I could go on forever about this. So
if I'm understanding you correctly, like many other things, it's all about intent.
Intent is, again, exactly, right? I know you're a writer. So the question is, if you're, let's say, writing a screenplay and you want there to be some big reveal, if you, let's say, don't have the juice worth the squeeze, I think there is some, revision to be done. And, it's a similar thing in music, right? What are you trying to accomplish with the musical forces that you're using? And so it's a study of everything from the form, the instrumentation, the micro elements, the macro elements, all this stuff can factor into it. So there's music that I don't enjoy that I think is effective music. I mean, if a billion people stream it, it can't be that bad, So there might be things that, I have predispositions towards based on my aesthetic preferences and stuff like this. But, clearly if something gets a billion streams, it's doing something for somebody. And so it's my job to sort of find where the value is in that music. Why do so many people enjoy it, even if I don't? And so I have to kind of really dive in and sort of figure that out. And that's been sort of the most fun aspect of, my time in academia is sort of really thinking about music in that way.
So if I may take away your soapbox and throw you a curveball.
Sure.
If you were to ever take part in a WWF styled event, what would you want your walkout song to be?
Easy. Calm Like a Bomb, Rage Against the Machine. I'm a...
Like there was you like Han Solo me. There was just like a loaded gun under the table.
Easy.
Did not know it was there. Easy.
So Rage Against the Machine, of course, is a band that I absolutely have adored since middle school. I've just, as a white kid in the suburbs,
they spoke to me.
You know what I mean? But again, like still to this day, there's this primal element to them. The political aspects of what they're singing about, I feel like they've been often imitated and never duplicated. They just had something special. Zach De La Rocha, just a sort of sui generis vocal and lyrical talent, in my opinion. And anecdotally, in our middle school gong show,
This is going places.
So like I've been into music for a long time, but for the gong show, I was going to get like, I think 4 other guys together, and I did this choreographed and a vocally arranged a cappella tune. And we rented wireless head mics and everything, like it was a real production. And
sweet,
12 or 13-year-old me was feeling myself, and we were really good. Like I'm serious, to the point where the judges thought we were lip syncing to a track. And so the band who won the gong show was a band that ended up being like the cool band in my high school,
Sure.
And that everybody adored and loved, and that I was extremely jealous of all the time. And they played Guerrilla Radio by Rage Against the Machine as their song.
Sure.
And I had never heard of this band before, and I was just like seething mad. And so I started playing bass around that time. And the first tune, of course, that I set out to learn is Guerrilla Radio by Rage Against the Machine. And then the rest is history. Like, I just got very into their catalog, and I just fell in love with them. And, and
the villain sparked the creation of a
and
hero.
so it comes from a bad place, but then turns into a good thing.
Well, in a moment of anger such as that, did you perhaps have a favorite G-rated curse word to utter on the drive home with your folks?
Well, my folks would not be the people around whom I would use, censored versions of stuff. My father's a retired cop, and so we basically I've been cussing since prenatal, and so they're not the audience for that. But when I find that I have to catch myself with stuff, I'm partial to the word beehole. I think that's a sort of a relic of a begotten era that I wish would come back in full force. And
my favorite thing about Beehole is back when it was like really Beehole had its heyday, if you will.
Yeah,
it wasn't
the halcyon days of Beeholdom.
The halcyon days of Beehole. That's an album I would listen to. But during that time, I feel like from the the media I've watched where that's being said, it's not taken as a G-rated curse, which is my favorite thing.
Oh man.
We're like in a time where that's like a G-rated curse, but then it was like this kind of like PG-13. Like you'd usually get like a shoddy look from an adult when you said beehole, or occasionally a glare, or even a watch your language. Like it wouldn't be something that they'd be like, he's working off steam. It wasn't like, God darn it. Like it wasn't taken as lightly. I feel like that one has kind of slipped down the scale to being G-rated, and now sadly, like you're saying, forgotten. Like not enough people utilize beehole.
There's, I'm a big
beehole fan over here.
Big beehole fan. I'm a big fan of this idea of phone aesthetics, the sort of beauty of the sound of words. And so I'll give a lecture on this in terms of lyric writing and stuff like this. There are certain sounds like plosive sounds like puck, stuff like this. That's why I think the word fuck is kind of an amazing word. It just kind of has everything. And so beehole to me is really pleasing because of the sort of opposite vowel sounds that happen, like the very spread E and the very open O. It's like watch yourself. Like if you ever look at yourself in the mirror, for listeners at home, please try this. Look at yourself in the mirror and say the word beehole in a very exaggerated way, right? You'll find.
Please continue.
I'm actually doing it right now. There's a mirror on the side of the room that I'm in, and so like when you say B, right, your teeth spread, like it's very mouthy, like you everything spread, and then whole, like basically the opposite happens. You go from horizontal mouth to vertical mouth, and it's like kind of amazing, and I really think it's
you go from like a gnashing of teeth to like a whistle.
Yeah. Beehole, right? Like, and so I feel like that's kind of what contributes to its silliness, and maybe why people haven't really stuck with it as a sort of self-censoring phrase. But man, I think it's just amazing. Like, cause the word butthole, like, doesn't have the same contrast. Like butthole is great, but
it's vulgar and basic.
It is
like butthole. It's like, all right, we got it.
And then is like the guttural sound, right?
It's like the difference between somebody who says World Wide Web and WWW.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like WWW is a lot. It's just something about it is just perfect. Somebody says World Wide Web, you're like, ugh.
My God, like it's like, okay, boomer, but but again, like I think this is a phenomenon that extends beyond the term beehole, right? So if you have ever watched The Wizard of Oz and, whatever, the flying monkeys or whatever they are come out as O-wee-oo, yo-ho, right? O-wee, like it's kind of like the beehole in reverse, right? And so reverse beehole, right? God, we're checking off all the boxes here. This is
really
terrific.
Getting them all. It's great.
So yeah, beehole is what I would roll with.
I roll with beehole.
I roll with the hole.
Oh my God, that's a shirt. What's this? Speaking while we're on this similar kind of topic,
while we're talking about beeholes.
While we're talking about beeholes,
okay.
What's the silliest thing you ever believed as a child that you look back on and just giggle? Religion gets assuaded here.
The American dream. Let me think about it for real. I don't know, when the internet first came out, when I got the like the AOL CDs in the mail.
Yeah.
Because I'm that old, and I've always thought that somebody was listening, and it was probably just my paranoia that my parents would, kind of find out if I was doing anything untoward on the internet or whatever, or talking to some just like sketchy people in like a chat room or something like that, like the ASL days, so maybe it was just this sort of, paranoia, but I always thought that, somebody could hear every single thing I was doing and like recorded every keystroke and stuff that I was doing on the internet. I just thought everybody had a lot, and like it's kind of prescient if you think about it.
I was gonna say that is more true than it should be.
I kind of wasn't that far off,
Yeah.
To the point, of course, you talk about, man, I'm really jonesing for some Blue Box mac and cheese or whatever, and you just get served only Kraft, ads, immediately, sort of thing. Obviously, there's something to this suspicion. So,
Yeah, they took your the NSA took your ID and ran with it.
Yeah.
Uh,
and the Tooth Fairy.
Speaking of and the Tooth Fairy. So, speaking of the internet, if you could check your life stats, what non-requisite activity do you think you have the most amount of hours logged on?
Like on the internet specifically?
No. Like life stats. Like, I mean, pooping. Actually, I guess that's.
Oh, you mean like
requisite.
like biological, metabolic stuff?
No, like anything and everything. Like reading books, walking the dog.
I mean, sleeping has to be the number
everything.
one, right? I mean.
No, not non-requisite.
Oh,
Sorry,
non-requisite. Like it's not required to live. Okay.
Yeah. So like eating, shitting, sleeping, those are out. I think YouTube has to be out because I think for too many people that hits
too close to home. That's a little bit too I'm a big games guy, and that's I guess we could talk about this because we kind of met through playing a game.
We did indeed.
And so ever since I was a kid, I've always preferred games as a form of recreation, and my father, as I discovered later in life, was like a pinochle hustler at one point, which I didn't even know that was something you could aspire to.
As somebody who's played pinochle a time or two, that's fucking hilarious.
Incredible, right? And so this was a bombshell because I was in high school when the poker boom started, and I graduated high school in 2004, and so that was the kind of 2003 was like the Chris Moneymaker World Series and stuff like this.
Chris Moneymaker, yeah.
So I, of course, caught the poker bug and played a lot. And I mean, like a lot, not because I necessarily loved the gamble, although I did, but more so because I've just always been really fascinated by just games themselves because, I was never going to win a contest based on brawn, for example, if you've ever seen me. So I had to sort of win in the arena of a battle of wits. And so I think because of that, I mean, I grew up playing sports and stuff, but I knew that, I wasn't going to be a member of the New York Knicks. Like I just knew that wasn't going to happen. So
just a little
missing a little bit. But and it's mostly my mid-range jumper. It's ass. But I would say, I've since I was like 6 or 7 years old, I've just loved playing games. It was something that my family did all the time. We'd be on vacation. We played Hearts together, like my brother, me, and my parents. And so we just always
you also had a perfect foursome for that too, eh?
Yeah, and so. Even to this day, when my brother and I go home and visit my folks for the holidays or something like this, we generally always get them some kind of board game so we could do some sort of family game night while we're home. It's just always been a really important part of my upbringing. And, because of that, I've just really, that's the sort of non-musical itch I need to scratch all the time is, being engaged in some sort of competitive to some extent, but more about the sort of problem-solving aspects of playing a game. And I would say between, years I spent trying to pay New York rent, playing poker and stuff, but even just, I don't know, you could play Parcheesi or whatever, like it doesn't matter to me. It doesn't matter what it is. I've just always been attracted to games. And so in terms of just a non-vital, non-necessary pursuit, I would say playing some sort of games, especially card games. I love card games, but I'm not too picky.
All right, so I mentioned in the intro, and you kind of brought it around talking about the Knicks. Your game of playing a pickup game of 3-on-3 with Whit and Marcellus, where you lost and he was in jeans. When was this, and how did this come about?
Oh boy, it was when I was in college, so it was going to be the latter half of the 2000s. I'm trying to remember all the details of the story. So John Baptiste and I were classmates, and I played in his band for a while. We, made some music together along with one of the guys who used to drum on the Late Show, guy Joe Saylor, if you ever remember, the drummer with the cowboy hat. Amazing guy, amazing player, amazing musician. And so I learned a lot from John, working with him. And, we were close for a while back in, the 2000s. And I definitely, appreciate the opportunity getting to work with him. And he was a big basketball player too. And so, of course, he's a sort of incredible musical talent. And so he's extremely well connected to a lot of the big jazz heads and always has been since he was a kid. And so Wynton was the chair of the jazz department at Juilliard, where we both went to school. And so, so there was a day where I think John invited Wynton to some like outdoor court that was a few blocks from Lincoln Center. And he said, let's just play some 3-on-3 one time. And so I said, all right. So I think it was me, John, and I'm trying to remember who the third guy on our team was. I think it was Lawrence Leathers, who was a incredible jazz drummer.
Sounds like you just made up a alliterative name. Lawrence Leathers. Let's call him Lawrence Leathers.
He was a legend. I mean, unfortunately, he's not with us anymore. Really tragic. But, incredible musician, great basketball player. And so the three of us, we thought we were, the Monstars, right? And so Wynton rolls up, and Wynton's wearing like jeans, like we're talking like jeans from the 90s, like the real tight acid wash ones, right?
Yeah.
I think he's got loafers on. I don't even think he's wearing like proper like athletic foot apparel.
He's got a top hat, a cane.
You know what I mean? And so, but he rolled up with these two guys, and one of these dudes was enormous. I mean, just a sequoia of a man. Just like a ridiculously huge guy. And I knew this was going to be an issue from the jump. And so I think when we were marking up, I think I was guarding Wynton the whole time. We were playing man-to-man. And because the other two guys, like John and Lawrence, if he was on the team, I think he was, they were, a little bit stronger than I was, so they could, take their chances with the other two guys. Wynton was the smallest guy on his squad. And so we play, and for us, we're trying to, lean on our athleticism and stuff like this. Maybe not as polished skills, because whenever you play play like old dudes at like the YMCA or something like this, they've always got like very polished fundamentals. They've got like their sort of like Tim Duncan bank shots and stuff like this, I don't know how big of a basketball guy you are, but, so
about 6 foot.
Okay. So we're playing, and Wynton Wynton was one of these guys who you could tell wanted to facilitate. He wanted to pass and stuff like this. But, when he wanted to shoot, he would shoot. He had the ugliest jump shot I've ever seen in my life. I'm telling you, it was one of these, like, kind of throwing it with two hands, like above the head, like above the head, sort of a little bit of a diagonal hitch in it. I like, a 5-year-old could have maybe drawn what this looks like, but he never missed. I'm telling you, I would be hand in his face, completely checked up into his body. He would never miss, didn't miss a single shot. And I think he like went 6 for 6 against me, which is just insane. And I'm like, I'm face guarding this guy. What the hell is going on? And so then he would just like throw an inlet pass to the giant that he brought, and he would just like do some post move, some like Hakeem Dream Shake or something like this, and just completely destroy whoever was guarding him. It was. I think we lost like 11-3. Like it wasn't even close. And it's not like
the mercy rule was in use. And
the only reason I think they gave us 3 points was because they maybe wanted to give us a chance, and we got annihilated. And I was just so crestfallen. I didn't know what. And like, this was my first time meeting Wynton Marsalis. And so it's not like I was tight with this guy. Like he was tight with John, and so, if I ever get a chance to like kind of run into him again, I'm going to tell him about this day and see if he remembers it. Because maybe, I mean, it would be amazing if like we meet in some professional capacity, and I tell him about this, and let's say he's been like savoring that win like for his in like it since it happened.
Yeah.
Like let's say that's something he like thinks about all the time, and he's just and it's something that just like kind of gets his rocks off. Sort of that would be an unbelievable moment for me. That would be so fun.
The best would be if you walk up and you go, "Hello, Mr. Marcellus. I'm Chris KAPICA. I don't know." He goes, "Oh yeah, 11-3. Face guard, bitch." Yeah. It's just like snaps it off as they're like locked in.
Oh man,
yeah. that would be priceless.
That would be amazing.
Well, on the kind of inverse of this, do you have a proudest accomplishment that the fewest people know of, but you still hold it near and dear to your heart that you'd love to kind of showcase for a moment?
This is a tough one because I'm pretty, I don't know. I think if you're in a creative field, you have to kind of be pretty out there with what you've done. You kind of, 'cause in order to like get opportunities and things like this, you kind of have to rattle off everything that you've kind of done.
Sell your own wares, yeah.
And that's sort of a frustrating thing because I don't really like to sell myself, but it is what it is. I mean, I tell a lot of people the Lady Gaga story that you mentioned at the beginning. Like that was just like a kind of a cool, fun, only in LA sort of thing.
Yeah.
But in terms of something I don't tell a lot of people.
Don't tell a lot of people, or a lot of people just don't know about.
Come back to me on that one. That's a tricky one.
So cycling back. While it's kind of up in the air, I just real quick for my own edification, did Lady Gaga and Tame Impala sing together, or did they sing separately and you were just playing piano both times?
Together.
That's wild.
It was a very weird but amazing night. If you're open to hearing the story,
go for it.
So I was playing with a band called Ghost Lion, and it's the front man was a friend of the guitar player in the band that I spent a bunch of years with after I got out of school and toured and recorded and did a bunch of stuff with. And so he asked me to work with him on some music and stuff, and I really have always loved his songwriting. A guy named Blake Hanley. So if Blake is listening, props, man. And I've always loved the stuff that he made and just wanted to contribute. And so when we were all in LA, there was a time, he's since moved to Florida, raising a family, doing great. And so around maybe 2016, 2017 or so, we were, writing, playing out, doing the band thing. And we had a residency at this little speakeasy and kind of intentionally off the beaten path. And that was what was kind of cool about it. It was a nautically themed bar where the bar was like a hollowed out boat because the guy was a sailor. And like there was all this like sailing shit all over the place. It was really kind of kitschy but cool environment. And we were playing a show. It was the same weekend as Fuck Yeah Fest. And at the time, I think Gaga and Tame Impala had collaborated on some song. And so they did, I don't know if they did a whole set together or if like one of them just came out for the other set. I don't remember. But they were both in town together. And there was someone in our band was connected to, I think, Dakota Johnson. And I think at the time, Dakota Johnson like either knew one of the Tame Impala guys or something. I don't remember. Somebody was connected to them at some point. Dakota Johnson apparently calls them and says, "Hey, we're at this speakeasy. Like you can't even it's not even listed. Like nobody's going to know you're here. Like come through. It's fun as a band. Like it's chill." And so we played our set and, we wrap, I don't know, around midnight, little after, something like that. And we are in the back and we hear a lot of commotion in the front and we hear, people like kind of the energy changed So we turn and look, and here comes Lady Gaga in these just like 12-inch platform shoes. You know, she's wearing, you know, this like a black sequined thing with these giant shoulder pads. And clearly everybody knows it's her. And she knows that everybody knows it's her. And she just goes, hello, everybody, you know, sort of thing. And I'm like, holy shit, that's Lady Gaga. And so the guy who was kind of serving as our de facto representation at the time, you know, our sort of liaison, says, you guys got to play again. I'm like, we just played. What are you talking about? He's like, just play your set again, like whatever. And so we do. And as soon as we wrap, as like the final note hits, you know, thank you, good night. This guy comes up to me. He says, hey, Lady Gaga wants to do karaoke. I'm going to introduce you. And so I say, all right. So it's loud and it's packed. There's like maybe 150 people in there. Like it was sweaty. And so, you know, she shakes my hand. She says, hi, I'm Stephanie. Some people call me Gaga. And I,
some people,
and I, you know, come back with like, hi, I'm Chris. Some people call me Monster, and which is true. And so it was funny to her. She like laughed because her fans are called Little Monsters. And so that I didn't even think about that as when I was saying it, but it has since after the fact resonated. And so she's like, look, I want to make some music. I want to sing. I want to do some stuff. Do you know this Susie and the Banshees song called Spellbound? And at the time I didn't know it. And so I said, can you play it for me? She's like, sure. So she takes out her iPhone and she puts it full blast, and she just like literally takes one hand and slams the phone into my ear and takes her other hand and presses like, you know, her hand into my skull so I can really hear it. Right.
Yeah.
And I'm still struggling to hear it because, again, you know, this is not an ideal listening environment. I'm like, let's do this. Let's just go outside for a second and like take a listen to this. We start to go outside. She's got like a plainclothes security guy who just says, nope, not happening. Not at 1 a.m. in mid-city. No way. And so we say, okay, we'll figure this out. So we're kind of in the vestibule of the venue. And I'm listening to the song. I'm getting it there. I'm like, okay, I know how it goes. She's like, she says, I want you to teach me how to play it on the piano. I said, well, fuck. Okay. So we go to the piano and I'm showing her the first chord. I'm like, okay, you play D minor, right? So and I didn't know how much knowledge she had. Like, I didn't know what her background was. I said, play D minor. She knows it. She plays it. I said, okay, now play D minor and do this in your left hand. I said, okay. Then I told her like some chord. I'm like, okay, play B half diminished 7. And she's like, oh, come on, man. Like, or whatever. It's like, I pushed too far, right? I said, okay, just do this in your right hand, do this in your left hand, whatever. So I got through the demonstration portion. She said, okay, here's what's going to happen. She's going to play the intro on the piano and sing. She's going to do a big piano slide. I'm going to take over on the piano as she gets off. And then she's going to just take the front mic and she's just going to start singing from there. I said, awesome. Yep. And so I'm ready to show the rest of the band like how the song goes and stuff like this. And what's his name? I think his name is Kevin Parker, right? The Tame Impala guy. Clearly they've been enjoying themselves. And he's like, I want to sing Britney Spears. And she's like, I'm fucking Lady Gaga. We're not singing Britney Spears. Like, what are you talking about? And so I'm like, well, what Britney Spears do you want to do? And he said, Baby One More Time. I'm like, well, I know it. I look at the bass player. Yeah. Do you know it? Yeah. Drummer? I could figure it out. Great. I'm like, well, we could do it if you want. And she hems and haws, whatever. And she says, all right, fine. And so,
do you know why she I'm going to make some speculation here. Do you know why she's probably a little mid on somebody doing Britney in front of her?
I don't have enough of the sort of scuttlebutt on her life to know, but I would imagine that she's a pop diva, and why would I perform somebody else's pop diva song?
I mean, maybe, but it's my understanding, if my memory serves, that there are a fair amount of Britney songs that were written by Gaga before she was Gaga.
Interesting. That's
so
good
that
to
might
know.
be like kind of like digging up somebody's old. like first works and being like, oh, let's do this. Like, I don't want to do my freshman stuff.
Okay, fair enough. And so, all the while, we're having a great time. She's like joking around, like we're it was really fun. Like she had great energy, even though she like absolutely did not want to do this Britney Spears song. But of course the place erupts. They go crazy.
Yeah.
And then after that, she kind of went solo and decided to debut an unreleased song that has since come out called Angel Down. And it was this like very powerful piano ballad. And she crushed it. She was amazing. And, of course we're all, smitten watching this. And so the night starts to wind down. I meet her at the bar because it was like 4 a.m. We're about to leave or whatever. And I just say, hey, that was really fun. Thanks so much for letting me be a part of this. And she says, next time we're going to play the song I wanted to play. And I said, dope.
You got it.
And then she was like, did I do okay? And I thought that was a very bizarre. I'm like,
that's awesome.
And I'm like, you're Lady Gaga. Of course you did okay, right? But like, of course I didn't say it like that. I gassed her up, because she legitimately did. She was super impressive. And again, and I said, we're about to leave, and she looked visibly sad about that. And she like blew me a kiss goodbye, and stuff like this. And, of course, in everybody, when I tell this story, just says, how did you not get her number? Meanwhile, my girlfriend is standing at the time, not my wife, but, girlfriend at the time, standing right there. And she even is like, you fucked up. You should have, gotten her. But even for just like professional stuff, right? Even just to like, be a session guy, in one of her things, but it was really refreshing to see somebody of that caliber, of that echelon, that just wanted to hang out and fuck around and make music, man. Like that was the coolest part about it, and she was funny, her vibes were great. She was like, had that sort of raw energy that you imagine her to have, but also you could tell that she's very like trained and, knows what's going on, even in a sort of no stakes environment like this. But if you fast forward a month after this happened, she announces that she's going to do a dive bar tour.
Awesome.
So I'm thinking, well, clearly this must have been the reason, right? She must have had a good time at this thing and just said, let's do this, and just played like a bunch of 250 cap rooms or whatever,
That's sweet.
And so I'd like to think that I was partially responsible for the Lady Gaga dive bar tour. But it's something that, like, these things happen to people in LA, you run into famous people and stuff. It was just never in my wildest imagination would I have envisioned this to go down. And it was just like such a fun night, something that, I'll never forget.
That's so fucking cool. What's your favorite book, cartoon, comic that you think would either be the best or worst choice for a big screen adaptation?
Wow. I mean, I feel like there's been just so much IP that has been adapted that I have to think about it.
Yeah, which hasn't?
My favorite book of all time is The Old Man and the Sea by Ernest Hemingway. And it's something that I read when I was really young, like probably too young to really appreciate it, in like 6th or 7th grade or something like this. And I've since then reread it several times. And I just think it's, I'm a Hemingway fan, in terms of just his style of writing. I just like the sort of, terseness of it. I like the sort of poignancy that comes from the less is more style. And The Old Man and the Sea was just something that always stuck with me because it was about just, I mean, I don't know. I'm sure you know the story, but, old guy, had bad luck fishing. Decides he's going to go out one last time. He ends up roping this enormous marlin that it takes him like several days to take down, and then when he's trying to get it back to shore, of course, these sharks come and attack the boat and basically eat the entire fish. So by the time he gets back to the shore, the fish is just like a skeleton. It's gutted, stuff like this. And so it's a very like kind of character study sort of thing. It's a very sort of philosophical, book that I think about a lot. I don't know if it's been adapted. Perhaps it has. I'd have to look it up. I mean, we have the internet, but let's see. Yeah, apparently there was a 1958 film about it. So like, okay, I'm not hip to that. Sorry.
Yeah.
So
it seems like it's one of those things that would make a great like short film for the Oscars kind of thing.
Yeah, and like good... these sort of like man alone with his thoughts sort of stories have done pretty well. Like Castaway, like was
Castaway. There was that one
Life
with,
of Pi. Was an adaptation.
Yeah, there's one with Mickelson that came out about like it has like literally no words. It's just him saving somebody whose plane crashed in the Arctic or something like that. Trying to remember what it is, but like no, it's a very tried and true formula to be sure.
So I mean, since I haven't seen a screen adaptation of it, considering I guess the last one was from the 50s or whatever, I would be curious about that.
Yeah, that sounds rad. And also, while we're talking about Hemingway, he has one of my favorite things that I'm sure you'll appreciate about him, especially when it comes to The Old Man and the Sea, which is, have you heard his discourse with Faulkner?
Yes.
Where Faulkner is like chiding him for using such small words and being almost like a simpleton.
Yeah.
And then Hemingway has the best comeback of all time. Poor Faulkner. Does he really think big emotions come from big words?
Yeah.
It's like, Jesus Christ, just dagger.
That's some BDE right there, right?
Yeah.
And sure, some people like Hemingway, some people don't. I could definitely understand both sides, but there is. I tend to be a loquacious person who probably talks too much for their own good, and so I can appreciate the sort of brevity of a guy like Hemingway and how he could say so much with so little.
Yeah. Well, while we're talking about Hemingway, temptation is definitely one of the things that is most quoted or attributed to him. Mm-hmm. Do you have a biggest everyday temptation?
Let's see. Besides peanut butter and pickle sandwiches?
Besides peanut butter and pickle sandwiches.
Let me think about that. Temptation. I mean, I'm always this. I don't want to go to like sit on the couch psychoanalysis sort of stuff, but it's difficult for me to sort of balance a lot of my areas of interest, and so like we talked about with games being a very prominent part of my recreational history, and music being basically my found, chosen, whatever you want to say, path. And also, just connections I have to, my wife, our families, our friends, stuff like this. Trying to juggle all of that is of course difficult. And I mean, this is a first world problem, obviously. But, there'll of course be times where, my mind wanders and races and, I'll see something and get the itch to, go play this game now because somebody said something that triggers me, or I'll have the itch to like go just like listen to this record or something like this. And just, I'm one of these people who will listen to a song 20 times in a row sometimes, either for analytical purposes or just because I'm one of these people who just can't get enough of something, because I think, I do have kind of an addictive personality. So, sort of spur of the moment, in areas of interest that maybe assert themselves perhaps when they socially shouldn't, is something that I kind of grapple with all the time. So I don't know if that counts, but that's kind of where I'm at.
What's the last or most memorable dream you had?
Most memorable dream that I had. I famously don't have trouble remembering my dreams, whereas my wife has like incredible recall of her dreams. So I like remember her dreams a lot because they're so perfunctory and boring. You know, because you would, I mean, of course, occasionally there's like the slasher dreams or whatever, and then we all have to just like wake up or whatever. But she'll like give me a recounting of her dream, and it's basically, you know, the equivalent of, I went to the DMV and I had to wait in line for 4 hours, and then they had to fill out this form, and then I went and had lunch with my friend. I'm like, are you kidding me? This is a dream. You know, there's no surreal stuff. There's no Inception, like wall flips and stuff like this. You know, like what are we doing here? So I'm always kind of amazed at that. As far as a dream that I've had recently that I can remember, I have some, like, you know, nightmares that I remember that are a little bit sort of chilling and personal to me, you know, but you know, often sort of like kind of sort of the walls closing in on me sort of stuff. You know, I have those sorts of dreams a fair bit, you know, where like the ceiling collapses and stuff like that. It's kind of dark, but you know, that'll sort of wake me up right fast, you know, but you know, I'm not somebody who easily remembers dreams, but I will remember when, let's say, music happens in a dream. I had a dream about a lyric recently that I saved, and that sometimes happens to me where I'll wake myself up because I hear some tune that ostensibly has to be mine, right? It's in my head. I made it up, right? But then I had a dream recently where I wrote a lyric. I think I said, what is it here? An apple rolling far from a toxic tree still has seeds.
Oof.
And I said, wow, that's pretty good. You know, so I woke myself up and wrote it down. So, you know, maybe that happens sometimes. It happens less with lyrics than it does with like riffs and, you know, chord progressions and stuff. And I'll have like little notes apps and stuff of, you know, little musical motifs that come to me. That happens a fair bit.
You dream in music?
Sometimes, yeah. What got
awesome.
really weird was I used to work at a little record label in downtown LA that's now defunct, but I was like their house composer, and they paired me with a French producer, a guy named Charles Cast. So if Charles is listening, you know, one of my boys, ride or dies, and you know, obviously I'm sitting next to a dude in the studio for 9 hours a day. So I decided I was going to learn French in 2015, and I got pretty serious into it for a while. Tried to get, you know, as conversational as I could, and I remember the kind of first time where I actually had dreams in French, and that was a sort of bizarre level up for me.
Wow. Well, kind of in the same vein, cycling back as we are coming to a close of our first segment here. Proudest accomplishments that the fewest people know of?
Proudest accomplishment that the fewest people know of. I can't remember in the intro if you told this story or not, but I played a show once and I got food poisoning because I was late to sound check, and I just kind of ran to the Chinese food shop, you know, around the corner from my place in New York that I'd ordered from a million times, without incident, but there was going to be an incident later that night.
Of course.
And so I had some friends coming from out of town, and they were going to go check out the show. It was a really small venue. It was like maybe 70 capacity room. And about 45 minutes before we go on, I'd had maybe one drink the whole night. I feel myself getting sick, and I yak my brains out in the bathroom. And I say, oh God, I have food poisoning. I have to, right? Because I didn't drink enough to, you know, have that be the reason. So I tell the sound guy like 15 minutes before we go on, I'm like, listen, man, can you get me some sort of bucket or something? I know I'm gonna Ralph on stage. He's like, how do you know? I'm like, go check the bathroom. And so the band I was playing with at the time, we opened with a song that had a very drawn out sort of southern twangy chicken pickin' style intro where there's a lot of build up, kind of foot stompy kind of song. And, we're hyping up the audience. Meanwhile, I'm turning green on stage. And there's a big count in, right? Like, huge 1, 2, 3, 4, to really send us off and have the song explode into sort of the main meat and potatoes of the tune. So on cue, 1, 2, 3, 4, Ralph everywhere. And so there's a bucket on the side of the stage that I put there intentionally. And so I'm playing, bass typically, you play, your right hand is typically plucking the strings and your left hand is sort of on the neck, doing the fretboard. That's the kind of standard way to play. And I'm playing that way. So I'm standing on the left side of the stage and the bucket's to my left side. So my instinct is to grab the bucket with my left hand, right? Which means I said, well, the show must go on. And so I have to take my right hand and I have to start playing notes that my left hand would normally play. And I don't have a hand to actually pluck the strings anymore. So I have to try to reverse what I normally do on the instrument. And so, of course, I can't play the busy part that I normally would play. I'm just kind of holding it down, just trying to play notes while I'm puking my guts out. And I'll never forget it. Half the room was appalled, just disgusted, revolted, screaming like, "Oh my God!" The other half of the room thought it was the most metal rock and roll thing they've ever seen. And there was a clear divide. And so, and I'm in survival mode. I'm just trying to get through the gig. It was one of the worst nights of my life, go home and I'm just spending the whole night with my face in the toilet, sort of thing. And so I basically had to play and puke at the same time using the opposite hand, right, to do so. And so about, I don't know, maybe somewhere between 9 and 12 months later, we play the same venue in the springtime or summertime or something. And we play a show, it goes great. We're mingling after the show. Some guy comes up and he says, "Hey man, that was awesome. Love the set." I'm like, "Oh, thanks, dude." He says, "The last time I was here, I saw this band and there was the bass player. I saw him. He was puking and still playing at the same time. It was crazy." I'm like, "Bro, that was me." And so we had this weird moment. And so we took pictures together and stuff. It was really funny. We had a good laugh about
That's
it. That's
awesome.
Small world, I guess.
Playing and puking at the same time.
Yeah. That's rock and roll,
Well, as we come to close the first segment here, do you have a song that listeners to this podcast just need to hear, in your opinion?
Man, this is who's your favorite kid? I mean, this is an impossible question. So I'm going to go with a song that has sort of sentimental importance to me. When I was a sophomore in high school, and remember, from my previous story about the Gong Show that I lost, right? I have this chip on my shoulder, right? We got to win. We got to win the school shows, right? And so when I'm a sophomore in high school, I get asked by 3 seniors to join their talent show band. So I say, all right. And they were all really talented musicians, still are. A lot of them are still active. They're doing great. And they wanted to play a song by Crosby, Stills, and Nash called Sweet Judy Blue Eyes. And it's, if you know Crosby, Stills, and Nash, it's got these really rich vocal harmonies, very sort of, feel good, folksy sort of sound. And because these guys were such great musicians, all the singing was spot on, the playing was spot on, the energy was spot on. And I remember vividly, we were playing the song, and at the end, like when, because the ending of the song has this like kind of somewhat famous like do 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 the thing, right? Where
Yep.
so if people know the song, they probably know it for that part. And as soon as that part's over and the song ends, the place just erupts, just standing O. And it was that moment where I said, this has to be what I'm doing with my life. Like there is no other option, right? I have to be involved in music making forever. It has to be the thing, right? All this other stuff about like when I was 5, my father told me, he said, you're going to be a doctor or a lawyer and you're going to buy me a boat one day. All that crap, throw it out, right? This is the plan. This is happening. It has to, because it was just infectious. There was just no other feeling like it. Just having that sort of gratification that you impacted people in such a way to make them do this. And we won the talent show. And vindication. And and it's the sort of thing that, you got to kind of know where your roots are, right? You got to kind of know your origin story in some senses. And because that's important, it's kind of what makes you who you are, especially artistically. Even if things are tough to confront in your past and stuff like that, sometimes, it's shaped you into who you are. I mean, teachers I had growing up and stuff like this, sort of pointing me down the path and, volunteering their time to sort of, bring me along and help me out. All that is directly responsible for sort of where I am today, the musician I am today. But that was the sort of turning point moment where I just said, this is serious. You're all in now. You got to take this seriously, because check out what the result can be. And there's just no other feeling like it on earth.
And with that beautiful story, we're going to head to our first break. Feel free to stick around and enjoy this totally real commercial, or take a minute to enjoy Sweet Judy Blue Eyes by Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young. Or if you really wanted to hear a song from a previous episode, check out the playlist on Spotify. Passionate People and Preposterous Peeves Podcast, Song Rex. Long title, I know. Don't worry, there's a link in the description. Either way, see you in a jiffy. Hey you. Yes, you. Yes, I'm talking to you. Have you ever wanted to record audio? Or perhaps fiddle with recorded audio? Maybe even record audio of a fiddle and then fiddle with said audio? Well, now you can with Audacity? With all the run-of-the-mill bells and whistles, you'll be confusing yourself with the tech in no time. But won't that cost lots of money? Because with my snow-blowing habit, I can only afford it. It ain't gonna cost shit. Audacity is free and easy enough to use that even a snow-blowing son of a gun can use it too. Welcome back, everyone. So I'm here with Chris KAPICA. Chris, what is your passion you've brought with you today?
If you couldn't guess from the other segments, it's got to be music. It's basically been my entire professional life, whether I've been touring with bands or composing for a record label, or now working with music students at a college that I'm running. It's just always been the thing for me. It's something that I think music is one of these just universally beloved things that I don't think needs too much of an introduction, although there is apparently about 3% of the population that music actively annoys them, and I can't remember the term for it, but I think my father-in-law might be one of these people. An amazing man, but I think that's one of his kind of maybe preposterous peeves.
Bet you guys just get along just thick as thieves.
Oh, he's a great. I mean, I love him to death. I mean, he's super sage guy. He's a poker player in retirement now, so of course we can talk, war stories at the felt and stuff like this. But he's super smart guy, really charming, really been so good to us. And but I think he's not necessarily somebody who from what I could gather, prioritizes music in his life.
So to kind of rewind before you even had your eye on somebody that would end up giving you this father-in-law, when did you first start really getting involved in music? What was your introduction? Did you have like favorite bands? Did you start, like, how early did music really start to weasel its way into you?
As a kid, I'd say the public school system really is the reason. And that's why I really speak passionately about the value of arts education, whether it's music, whether it's visual arts, whether it's whatever. I mean, a film program or something, like whatever it is. I mean, these are really important ways to use your tax dollars, because it sets people on a trajectory. And, if we're now in the midst of a writers and actors strike, so what do you think your life would be like if those people just can't afford to, or aren't around to make the things that you consume? And, the training starts when you're young. So for me, fourth grade is when they start introducing the kids in my school district to orchestral instruments. So you have to get some reps playing the flute, the clarinet, the violin, and the trumpet. And so flute,
one of those a lot harder than the other ones.
Maybe. For me, there was. The flute, I couldn't get a sound out of it.
Oh, really? That was your tough one?
For me,
I thought I remember reading an article saying that the hardest instrument to pick up was the violin.
Violin is extremely difficult for a lot of reasons. But for me, the flute was just the thing I couldn't figure out. Of course, the physics behind it are working against me. 75% of the air that you blow through the thing doesn't even go into the instrument. It just escapes. So like, it's hard enough. And so I couldn't get a sound out of it. I was distraught. And this was the first instrument that they introduced us to. I had to like get picked up from school because I was just bawling my eyes out.
Oh, no.
But clarinet was the instrument that I really took to. It was just, for some reason, I just had a knack for it. I was really good at it, really early. And I said, okay, I like being good at something. That's cool. And so, all through middle school, I'm playing in wind band and stuff like this. And I got to a level as a, 10-year-old or whatever, where I was good enough to like get bored of the super easy 10-year-old music that they put in front of me. And so I would kind of dick around and like improvise and noodle and make up my own parts or whatever. And when I was in 6th grade, we got a new department chair for the district, and a guy named Joe Phillips. And he called me into his office one time, and I said, oh, shit, And he said, I know you're making up your own parts. And I said, yeah. And so he said, well, you've obviously got a creative impulse. Have you considered writing music? And I said, no. And so he and another band director started showing me what to do. And, I didn't even have staff paper at the time. So I would just take loose leaf paper and take a ruler and draw all the lines out and stuff like this. And in 6th grade, I wrote my first piece called The Chase. Whoa. And it was terrible, obviously, because a 6th grader wrote it. But the 6th grade wind band premiered it at the final concert. And I mean, talk about like, rock star status for me. Like that was, you see, that was insane. You have this huge room of people squeaking and squawking their way through something that you wrote, and you have people clapping for you at the end, and you get to take a bow. And like I said, wow, this is rad. So 7th grade, I wrote another thing. I think it was called La Mistake Royale or something like this. That was a mistake too. Like it wasn't any, but it was a little bit better.
Not only in name.
It was a little better than the thing I wrote in 6th grade, right? And the 7th grade band played it. And so then I got the bug. I just said, this is really cool. my parents had a little Casio keyboard for me. I started messing around with that because again, I was like writing and stuff. So I wanted a place where I could just make noise and ideate and things like this. And, and then eventually I started playing in 7th grade. I played in something called the rock ensemble, which was for 7th and 8th graders, where you basically were in a large band. There were something like 12 singers, like 3 guitar players, 2 drummers, a couple bass players, some keyboard players, whatever. And so you would tour local middle schools. You'd get on a yellow bus and you would go to, some place down, a few miles up the street, and you would play for 5th and 6th graders in their cafetorium or whatever. And I said, holy shit, that's awesome. And I was a singer at the time and a clarinet player. And, being around the rock band stuff, you get introduced to repertoire because, you have to sing songs. And so you're learning a lot of classic stuff that the instructor is showing you and all that. So I've got the sort of like concert music composition thing in wind band. I've got the pop music thing in rock ensemble. Every year in rock ensemble, there was a reunion concert where people who were like in high school and went to college and stuff would come back and perform with the middle school group. And some high schoolers heard me sing, and they say, hey man, you could sing a lick. And like, this is back like prepubescent me, where I'm like blasting high D's and E flats and stuff, just like ridiculous stuff, like a castrato or something. And I said, hey, thanks, man. And they said, well, do you play bass? I said, no. He's like, well, I'm a guitar player and he's a drummer. So if you learn bass, you get to be in a high school band. And I said, well, shit, this clarinet thing is cool and all, but I don't think the clarinet thing is going to get me the girls in the future. So, so I begged my mother to, buy me a bass, and like, she got me like an off the rack, Fender Jazz and stuff like this, a few $100, nothing crazy, but I played it for like 10 years. And to this day, it's like one of the best sounding basses I've ever played. I don't know. I just must've gotten lucky.
Wow.
Yeah. And I just fell in love with it. And, again, the guerrilla radio story, right? This had just happened. I had just lost the Gong Show. And I said, well, I'm going to get these guys. And I started learning things like guerrilla radio. And then I started learning some of the classic rock stuff. And so all this is happening, right? I'm writing music on sheet music for kind of large ensembles. I'm like singing. I'm learning to play the bass on my own because I want to be in the high school band and get the girls and stuff. Freshman year of high school, there was a brand new pilot program called Rock Club, which was run by a science teacher who was in one of the, kind of more esteemed Pink Floyd cover bands on the East Coast, kind of moonlighting. And then there was a Spanish teacher who was a drummer who was into like all the kind of 70s prog rock and stuff like this. So of course they see me, who's like just consuming music at this point and just, trying so hard to just get good. They just feed me all of this music to listen to. And of course, like a lot of it's super progressive and difficult and challenging. And I was just, every synapse is firing, and I'm just, trying to just learn all this music and try to play these really complex things. And I just became obsessed. And, but again, if it were not for, and again, I guess another thing, the middle school or the department chair who kind of got me started on this path of writing music and stuff. In high school, he's staying after school on his own time, working with me one-on-one on the things that I'm writing, giving me feedback, showing me things to listen to, giving me basically free lessons, and he didn't have to do that. He just believed in my promise, and, I owe him a lot for that. And, he's the one who convinced me to apply to Juilliard. And I just said, no, that's like what other people do. That's not my experience, right? You just have it in your head that like this place is hallowed ground. This is for people who have been on a specific life trajectory since they were kids, the prodigious 5-year-old concert pianists and stuff like this. I said, that's not me. Like I'm picking my nose and eating it. I'm playing basketball, like You know, like I'm one of these guys. I'm you know, rough and tumble musician. But he said, no, just do it. Just do it. Why not? And you know, he was right. Like they took a chance on me, which was, you know, something I'll be forever indebted to Joe Phillips for. But you know, the thing is, the only way I would have gotten to a level of skill, a level of experience, you know, playing in, you know, everything from jazz band to, you know, rock club to, you know, the high school musicals and whatever. If it weren't for these opportunities in my public school education, there is no chance in hell I would have stumbled upon any of these things. There's no way I would have been exposed to certain musics without instructor input. There's no way I would have been inspired and you know, egged on to keep going. And I really owe that. I owe my you know, if you want to call it success, to the system. And that's why it's just so important to subsidize the arts at a young age, right? You know, because it can completely transform somebody's life. It can allow somebody to discover and realize their passion and potential. And you know, it to me, it's just it's a vital thing. It's a necessary thing. And without this stuff, you're not going to have your Netflix shows that you're binging. You're not going to have that album that like, you know, that changed your life. You know, you're not going to have any of those sort of experiences beyond just, you know, the things you do to make money. And, you know, life needs to be enjoyed. The arts are a prime way to do that. And, you know, you need to support this stuff, you know, for the folks at home.
And that concludes your weekly reminder.
Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
Yeah. So, as this is kind of a very different kind of passion than most people have, and especially in your experience early on is requisite to perform, did you ever deal with, like, was the idea of performing in front of people, stage fright, was that ever a thing for you?
No.
And if so, no?
When I was 5 years old,
well, fuck you then.
No. Well, here, let me elaborate. When I was 5 years old, for a long time, my parents sent me to like summer day camp where, you know, they drop you off when they're going to work. They pick you up, you know, around like 2 or 3 in the afternoon, whatever. Every year at the end of the camp, you have to put on a skit. And typically it's a bunch of like the high school and college age counselors, like doing funny choreography with the campers to, you know, pop songs and stuff like this. So when I was 5, they did, you know, that song Tequila, if you know it. And of course, like ba 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 ba, like that one.
Funny story after your story.
Okay. And so, you know, famously there's the Pee Wee Herman sort of dance to the song, right? And so they dressed me up. You know, my mother, God bless her, you know, she used to, you know, make all my Halloween costumes and stuff. She was like a very good seamstress. And, you know, so she basically made like tailored the gray suit, you know, that Pee Wee Herman wore in the dance, right? And so I come out doing the, you know, if you've seen a dance, it's like your fists in front, fists behind, like to the beat and everything. And so of course everybody eats this up because it's this 5-year-old kid doing this thing, right? And so I loved the attention, you know, even before then, like preschool, you know, I would be in the preschool play. My mother tells me they were doing the Billy Goat's Gruff, right? You know, like and you know, with the troll and everything. Originally, they cast me as the troll, and I said, and I actually apparently said to them, I don't remember this. My mother tells me, I don't want to be cast as the troll because I don't want to be typecast as a bad guy. Make me somebody else. So I'm thinking about like
5 years old. I don't want to be typecast.
Yeah, like 3 or 4, like really young. I'm like, I don't want to be the troll. He's a bad guy, you know? So like, I'm getting picky about parts that I'm being assigned in fucking preschool, right? And
That's
so, like,
awesome.
I guess it was just maybe always there. Of course, do you like you get nervous when you play? Absolutely, and you know that's gonna happen because it means you care about what you're doing. That's why your nerves
Yeah.
kick in. And so, you know, people always ask about, you know, well, how do I conquer that? You know, of course, everybody's got different techniques and stuff. I'm not going to go into it so much, but if people are curious, sure, they can hit me up or whatever on socials. But I've just always thrived in that environment. You know, I've always been sort of a ham. I've always been sort of a showman. You know, I was the guy in the band jumping off amps and stuff like this, you know, and thrashing around. Like I was always that guy, you know? And so the sort of performative aspect of the arts was always there. I did like musical theater as an actor from about 6th grade through 12th grade. Some of them were more like regional sort of companies and stuff. Some of them were just like the local things. But it was something I was very seriously considering going into, you know, being a stage actor. And it was a lot of fun. And again, just because similar to the high school talent show story, there's just an infectious, you know, thing of being on stage and seeing people react when you do well. And I've always appreciated that because it's not a given that people react this way. I've been in situations where they don't, you know? So you have to earn that. And that comes through putting the work in, that comes through, you know, honing your craft, that there's a lot, it's the sort of, you know, the light at the end of the tunnel. You know, you write a big orchestral piece, like if I was working on some commission, you know, I wrote like a sort of like pseudo ballet for the Albany Symphony's new music company. And it was like a big multimedia thing with like a choreographer. I had a guy build like a LED, like remote controlled light suit for the dancer and stuff. Like it was a crazy thing. You know, you spend all this time working on stuff like this. Again, nobody sees that. Nobody sees, you know, you just like toiling and like you're stuck and you're just like so frustrated. Everything you write sucks. Like, what's the point? Who's going to listen to this? It's only going to be like, what, 200 people in the audience, like all this stuff. And then like the day actually comes where you get to hear the thing and you get to be in the room where people are playing this thing. And it's 6th grade wind band all over again. It's the chase, you know, it's that feeling. And so there really is nothing like that. But it's not the reason to pursue this stuff, obviously, right? It's the icing on the cake. The work and the art is the reason to do it. It's not the accolades, but of course, like you put all this time in, it's nice to get some gratification, you know.
For sure. So, I also had a brief foray in music when I was in high school, and talking about tequila, we graduated about the same time. It sounds like you're class of 04, I was class of 06. Granted, different time zones. I was West Coast boy.
Sure.
But I think kind of trying to remember when it came out, but I feel like the reason we knew about tequila and were a fan of it, I hope is the same reason, which is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Oh, fair, yeah.
Yeah. So big fans of it. However, I'm in a red state. I grew up in Nevada.
Okay.
And so alcohol, while imbibed infrequently, is not something you want kids talking about because it doesn't fit with your, in quote, Christian values that most people ascribe to.
Meanwhile, this is the state where Las Vegas and Reno exist, you know?
That is very accurate. So our band director is, you know, he's not against the song, but he knows of the kind of ethics that are expected in school. So he goes, okay, you guys can play the song because we were very adamant about it, but you can't say tequila. So you have to say water. And so growing up, played the song a lot. And then it gets a dad. Water. Yeah, let's go back into it. It's just like, I remember feeling it's like, this is the coolest, hokiest thing I will ever do.
Incredible. That's amazing.
It's awesome. So you've already, you know, rubbed shoulders with so many people just in the stories you've told us here today. But if you could, pull out a glossary of the musicians in the world, is there someone who you would want to work with or collab with?
Stevie Wonder. Stevie Wonder is my favorite songwriter of all time. I think if you go really deep into his catalog, I mean, of course, he's an incredible just musician, performer, artist, singer, but there's so much nuance compositionally. Some of the stuff that he, the B-sides and things like this, of course, all the hits are incredible. They're going to be with us forever. But some of these B-sides, like he's doing some really adventurous stuff that kind of changes certain aspects of music, in terms of how people say approach playing chords on the keyboard, like how you voice a chord or something like this, to the point where there are, classes devoted entirely to, let's say, Stevie Wonder music theory. Right. And
that's awesome.
He's one of these people that I've just stylistically, he just checks every box for me. And so that would be a dream come true. I mean, there's so many people I would just absolutely, I'd be chomping at the bit to work with, he's kind of top of mind. Of course, there are a bunch of dead people I'd love to work with, people like Bach. I'd love to pick Bach's brain about stuff. I mean, that guy was an alien.
Well, if you go back to some German graveyard, I'm sure you can.
Well, maybe, I don't know if he'll answer, but I could try.
I meant literally.
Oh, yeah. Sure. But
what's the biggest? Sorry,
no, I was just gonna say, yeah. There's just so many amazing talents out there, and it's
for sure.
I just I'm of the opinion where I love collaboration. I love working with other people. It's because I'm a social person. I love the sort of push and pull of making something mutually, trying to find your sort of ways to get something made that maybe you have a vision of it, they have a vision of it, and you find something in the middle that neither of you could have ever made by yourselves. And so they don't even have to be A-list people that I work with. I mean, I've gotten to work with such amazing people that you've never heard of, that have taught me a lot, that inspire me, and they don't have to be a name to really get me going.
What would you say is the biggest misconception about music creation and performance by the wider world?
Wow. The biggest misconception is that it's not easy. You look at sort of the exhibition of music now, which is a lot of social media like TikTok and things like this. A lot of these people get discovered. You just feel like these people were plucked out of thin air sometimes, where what you don't see is the sort of getting to that point. Sure, maybe that one video goes viral and it sort of starts a chain reaction that gets their career going. It's the catalyst for everything. But you don't see the outtakes. You don't see the time you spent learning to play the instrument that you're then going to play on social media. You don't see the hours and hours that people spend listening to music to sort of, maybe they don't look at it as analytically as I do, but they intuit certain things, and you maybe by rote start to absorb certain concepts, even if they can't, let's say, identify them by name or something like this. They just sort of become part of their artistic DNA. So much goes into getting to a certain level of mastery at what you do. And it's not always glamorous, practicing sucks, but you have to do it, and you have to do it the right way to get the most, out of the time. You can't just sit in the practice room and just say, I'm practicing, right? You have to be focused with intent. And there's so many distractions out there now that are pulling you in all these different directions. Just having your phone in your pocket makes practicing almost impossible, So, and so music is a really hard discipline. Just because we love it doesn't mean it's easy. And I think that's something that a lot of my students discover when they enroll and they get into my musicianship classes, whether it's a written theory course, whether it's like an oral skills course where you're doing transcriptions and you're learning to use your ear, whether it's a sort of rhythm class that you're sort of dissecting what other people are playing, but also being able to execute in your body certain patterns and things like this. No matter what it is, there is a lot of technique and training that goes into getting to a certain level of proficiency. And for some people come in with strengths in certain areas of that. Some people come in with others. Some people have never really thought about music in that way. They just have, like, let's say, a unique voice and they have a vision, and they need to round out their toolkit. And so for a lot of people, when they first start studying music because they love it, or whatever, and they have a vision of what it means to be a musician, when they actually get into the thick of it, they're like, damn, this is hard. I'm like, yeah, you're going to get your ass kicked at this school, but you're going to be the better for it at the end of the day. And, I think the people who are willing to go on that journey to kind of hop into that crucible of fire, and, come out the other and are able to come out the other side, they have a profound appreciation for what it takes to do this. Even if, let's say, later in life they decide not to, or they, their journey takes them somewhere else. They at least understand that when somebody does something on a record, sure, are there fancy editing techniques where you can gloss over some, minor inaccuracies and things? Of course you can. But, mastery when you hear it. And that could be mastery in any discipline. Doesn't mean just like playing. It could mean music production, the actual technological side of things. That's technique too. You have to really learn a lot of different, tools on your computer now, because a lot of it is just all digital, emulation of analog stuff. But you have to get to a certain point that's, okay, here are how the things work. Once you learn how the things work, how have people used them? Okay, now you have to learn them in context. Then you have to learn how to be imaginative with them, And so it takes a really long time, and none of us are where we can be, right? There's always more to learn. There's always further you can go. You can always go deeper into a discipline. And, this is a lifelong pursuit. And so if you really are passionate about something, you sign up for that. And, to get to this, to Stevie Wonder level, like, you have to put in the time, period. It's hard.
To quote the great one, you got to pay the cost.
You got to pay the cost. Exactly.
So in movies and TV, they often showcase musicianships, the whole kind of band, traveling, performing thing. What do they show correctly, and what do they show most incorrectly? Like, hit the two ends of the spectrum that are like, nailed it, good job, and what the fuck, you guys have no idea what you're talking about.
We recently finished watching Daisy Jones and the Six, which I do recommend. I think a lot of the...
There's a caveat coming.
No, I think it's great. I really enjoyed it.
Oh, okay.
I went in there with zero expectations because of how, fantastical a lot of these depictions of the road are and stuff like this. If you've seen Almost Famous, that's probably what it was like back then, pretty
Sure.
freewheeling and stuff. But I think, Daisy Jones and the Six takes place in the 70s. It's supposed to kind of be a simulacrum of, like, kind of Fleetwood Mac's experience, sort of thing. And the music was terrific. Like, I definitely recommend people watch it. The things that most often get depicted in these, like, music shows, music movies, are really successful bands where you have the tour bus, or you're flying to gigs and you're playing these big stages. You have all these adoring fans coming. What they don't show you is, like, the mid-level whatever bands, like we were. We were good. We were playing a lot of great festivals and stuff. We opened for all kinds of people. We did some really cool stages. But we also did some bullshit, man. Like, we played in Italian restaurants for like 3 people. Like, I remember I played a show in Atlanta, and we had, like, the Monday night at 10:30 shift or something like this. So the only person I know in Atlanta at the time was my ex from high school. And
Oh no!
and we're on good terms. I mean, like,
Oh, okay.
No hard feelings or anything. Like, she's terrific. Happily married, kids. Beautiful family. Like, she's doing great. And so I messaged her. I said, "Hey, we're rolling through Hotlanta. You want to come to the show?" And she said, "Yeah, sure." And so that was really cool. And so we get there, and there's like 2 flights of stairs that I have to haul my huge speaker cabinet and stuff like this. And I'm basically giving myself a hernia, loading in. And, you don't have roadies. You don't have things like this. It's you. You are the roadie. You are the sound guy. You are the road. You're everything, right? And so you're hauling all your gear, hoping that you don't get a parking ticket on your trailer, because you don't know where to park in this town. And so she and her boyfriend at the time were the only people who came to the show.
Oh
And
God!
we played our set. I mean, the bartenders loved it. They took us out for a night out. It ended up being a really fun night. But but you play to a room with 2 people in it, and one of them is your ex and her new boyfriend. Like, it's
rough.
It's a show, and you have to go 2 flights of stairs to haul your huge speaker cabinet both ways, right? Like,
Yeah.
And so we've gotten stiffed on gigs, right? Where they double book and they tell you drove 8 hours and they tell you can't play because they double booked, and I'm ready to go completely New York Postal on this guy, and stuff like this. So a lot of people glamorize the road because they are seeing stories of really successful acts doing this.
Yeah.
And that is, I would say, for successful acts, a pretty accurate depiction of what that is like. But it is the exception to the rule when it comes to what most musicians who say, I went on tour, lived through, right? We were driving a 2005 Ford Majestic conversion van, hauling a 6x12 trailer, getting parking tickets everywhere. But again, I wouldn't give it up for the world. There was shitty shows. There were transcendent shows, where we're playing for thousands of people, everything in between. My favorite shows are like the smaller ones, like 250, 300 people. Like, those are my favorite rooms to play. But there is more to being a sort of professional artist than just the upper crust, right? There's a whole middle class of musicians that kind of doesn't get talked about as much, especially nowadays, where you can make money making music in a lot of different ways, and sometimes you don't even have to leave your house to do it. And so there's this whole other ecosystem for professional musicians that maybe doesn't get as depicted on TV and movies because it's not as, glamorous. They're not these huge sprawling studios. You don't have the huge bus, you're not playing these like giant rooms sort of thing, but people can grind it out, and you can have life-changing experiences either as a viewer at these shows or as the person on stage. And I've been lucky to have that.
So on the other end of the kind of spectrum, what's your favorite non-obvious aspect that doesn't get depicted in movies and that most people don't even know exists?
Non-obvious aspect of music?
Of music, whether it be creating, performing, just what have you.
I would say getting like for example, my background is mostly in composition. Like, I'm a performer, sure, but like I'm a writer first, I would say. Like, in terms of my strongest skill set, my like top of the call sheet, like I'm a writer arranger, and so and like I can produce to a certain level, right? So I will compose some wackadoodle thing. I will produce it to the best of my abilities, with all the sort of effects and, automation and things that I want to use. But, if I want it to be professional quality, I need help with somebody kind of getting it over the finish line, like a dedicated engineer, like a mix master sort of person. And so I'll get it 97% of the way there, and I need somebody to punch it home for that last 3%. There's getting the final master of a recording back from your mastering engineer and falling in love with it is something that is really satisfying. you know, because again, for me, it takes me a long time to make a lot of this music because a lot of it's really involved and very dense. And getting that final recording back and hearing that you have all the sort of fantasies kick in, right? It's the, oh, you know, I could see this getting placed in this show, or, you know, oh, this is going to take off and we're going to start opening for this art. And like, that's where the sort of, you know, wheels get turning. Of course, it doesn't generally pan out the way you just like dream it'll happen. But that sort of little kid in the candy store, look at all the possibilities. That feeling starts when you get that like final master back, and you know that this is going to be the start of the release campaign, and you're going to know that other people are going to get to hear this really soon. And that's sort of like that there's a really giddy moment, you know, when you get that final master back.
Yeah, it's kind of like the beginning of a relationship.
Sure.
Where it's like this could go places, you know.
Yeah, and then you have like 200
very
streams
beautiful.
in a month, and you're like, well, I guess it didn't work out, you know.
Yeah. Oh, she still has another boyfriend. Her parents hate me. All right, before we close out this segment, what would you say encapsulates, and I know this is a little hard because the musical experience or the kind of livelihood or the, you know, the day-to-day is so divergent from the one before and the one after. But if you were going to encapsulate the day in a life of a musician, you know, you pick which aspect or whatever like that, what would you say it generally looks like if you could break it down?
So I'll maybe kind of look at a specific moment in time for me when I was like touring and we were like doing the thing. Typically you're sleeping late because you were playing late the night before, but not always, you know. If you're playing a show that day, you're typically doing all your sort of minutia in the sort of late morning, early afternoon. You typically have to load in and do sound check in the sort of like late afternoon, like maybe like 3:00, something like that. So you then will come back to the venue later and, you know, play. So it's, and then you're typically out late, right? You know, because if you're playing the 11 p.m. set, again, you don't have roadies to clean up all your gear for you. You have to pack up your own stuff. You got to load it in the van. You got to make sure everything's accounted for, that your van's not going to get broken into or stolen or whatever. You know, and then you want to hang and, you know, because again, you might be in a new place or you're seeing some old friends that you haven't seen in a while. So it tends to skew late. Days you're not playing, you're typically driving. And for us, we would rotate shifts. You know, we'd have, you know, somebody do like, you know, somewhere between 4 and 8 hours. And then they would kind of lay the back seat down flat and just have somebody just pass out who had just driven, and then somebody else will take the wheel. Obviously not cool, you know, very dangerous, but you know, that it is what it is. And so there's a lot more driving than people maybe expect when you're doing this. There's a lot more downtime when you're like touring than you might expect. And so you have to find other hobbies and stuff when you're not driving. You're either working on material. Obviously, that's a great opportunity to do that. And when I first started getting like kind of recording technologies on my laptop and stuff like this, that was a huge boon for me because I could just mock up sketches and stuff like this and write music while I was just, you know, doing nothing in the van. So you can use that time productively. Sometimes you just don't have the bandwidth. You just need to just, you know, find some other outlet, you know, read something, listen to something, you know, whatever. So there's a lot more downtime when you're like a touring person. So if you're in a cool place, you know, hopefully you'll get a chance to see the place you're in. You know, you get to see the city, you get to walk around, you know, you get to sightsee a little bit maybe. Different people have different routines. Some people like to exercise, you know, at a certain point, like maybe between you know, stuff like that, you know. So everybody's kind of got their stuff to get themselves in a headspace to perform. I hated the green room, so I tried to avoid it for as long as possible, you know, and just I would like go out on walks and stuff like this, or I, you know, maybe try to find some restaurant to go try.
But what if it was like the blue room?
Yeah, you know, the blue room, why not? but it's just the downtime. I hate to hurry up and wait,
Yeah.
right? You just sound checked, you're stoked, you're ready to go, and then you just have to wait around until the time. I just hated that. I need to get my mind off the show, and so that I could just like kind of return back, plug back in, say, okay, let's do this. Now I'm in the headspace. Let's go. I don't want to like wait around and mull over all the different things that could happen, and just so I needed to preoccupy myself with other stuff. Everybody else has their routine though. If you're like a composer for for media, like one of our good friends that we're actually going to have dinner with tonight, is a very talented TV composer. He's done a lot of stuff you've heard of, and he'll tell you that it is a grueling day. You are at your computer for maybe 14 hours because the timetables for making music for media are crazy. Ridiculous. You have to write so much music in so little time, which is why, when you see the credits for, composed by whoever, they have assistants, their assistants have assistants. You have to divide the labor, right? It's typically not one person doing it. But that's how you're able to meet all these deadlines. Film composition too. You typically have like really short windows to do these things. When I was working at the label, we were mostly composing music for like sync licensing. So getting your stuff placed in TV, ads, film, whatever. We'd occasionally like try to ghostwrite some stuff for people, but we were doing mostly media composition. And some of these deadlines were ridiculous. You get, because we were on the West Coast and some of these people are on the East Coast. And so you need to get it before they leave the office on the East Coast. So you get the brief that morning when you walk in. And so you might have like 6 hours to make something, and I remember we got a brief for NBA 2K16, and there was a campaign that they were doing with like Spike Lee doing this sort of monologue at the beginning or whatever. We get approached by the production team and they say, hey, we're trying to get this Nas song, but it's like a really expensive license. So can you do something like, can you give us a couple sound-alike options? And this is a very common thing, right? They want something in the vein because they're married to the temp track. And so they want to, get something that's kind of in a similar vibe. And so they said, can you give us 2 options by the end of the day? And so we say, yep. And we just always say yes and figure it out later. And so typically my process with my partner was I would compose the stuff. I'd mock up a demo. I'd send him the idea. He would, tighten up the production a little bit, mix it, master it. And then I'd be working on the next thing as he's doing that. And we had a good system going. We could finish each other's sentences, all that kind of stuff. And, this making 2 tracks basically in a day, right? And
Damn.
this is the industry. Like if you want that gig, you got to be able to answer the deadlines because music is like the last thing that gets added to productions.
Yeah.
I've seen things where they're like, this commercial is airing in 2 days. We need music now. And here's our budget. And it's pathetic. Do you want the gig? And so this happens all the time. And so, people who are still in this industry, I have immense respect for them because again, you have to, like we were talking about before, the stuff you don't see is that, somebody tells you I can make a track in a day. Well, how did they get to that point? They boned up, man. They got chops together. They've been working at this for a long time. They're able to use their musicianship training and their technological prowess to read written English and decipher what non-musicians want. And that's like, sometimes you read these things, it's like, give us something fast but slow, with a big build up, make it sound like, and you insert 2 diametrically different artists, and you're like, what do I do with this? And you have to figure it out and you have until the end of the day to do it. And so depending on what side of the business you're on, it can be breakneck, or it can be a lot of sort of boom and bust with your time. And so it really, like, because the music industry is so vast and there's so many different things you could do in it, it's very case dependent, depending on what side of the industry you're on, your time can be spent in various ways.
Wow. Well, to move on to something so deep and just mind altering, to something so annoying and frustrating, my friend, what is your preposterous peeve that you've brought with you today?
Okay, I mean, I'm kind of entering into the Larry David phase of my life where everything annoys me, kind of. I'm becoming like a crotchety, just ass in some senses. But the thing that like I think is like a stupid thing that shouldn't annoy me that does is when people load the toilet paper roll the wrong way. And I say the wrong way. There is a right and a wrong way. The right way is so that the paper falls over the roll, right? Not under. So every time somebody, and again, why is this? If you load it from under, you have to like scrape your knuckles against the wall that somebody just wiped their ass with, basically, right? Like, and so do you want those germs on you? No. And then there's also like people have studied, how much toilet paper do people use if they load it going over versus going under? And you actually use less when you do it going over because you could see how much you're taking. And this was how it was also, actually designed. There are blueprints of toilet paper that exist. You can Google it. This is how toilet paper was designed. It was designed to be dispensed over. So just fucking stop doing it the wrong way. So every place I'll go to, I don't care if it's like my homie's house. I don't care if I'm at some like nice restaurant. I will flip the toilet paper over if I can. Like if it's a mechanism that I can navigate, I will flip it to the way that it's supposed to be. Because again, what are we doing here?
I mean, plus you also have a cat.
I do have a cat.
And if it's done or wait, no, is that the reason?
So okay, this might be the one carve out that I'll give for people. We have a cat. We love her to death. She's amazing, and luckily she's not one of these cats who will claw at the toilet paper and just like rip it and run across the apartment or whatever, and just like kind of empty the whole chamber. So if you have a cat that does this, sure, I can understand, but it's not going to really solve the problem. It's not. If the cat wants to get into the toilet paper, it's going to. It would destroy it anyway. It might just claw the back end of the toilet paper. In which case, do you really want to wipe with that? When you get to that part. So just figure something out. Find some life hack that can get around that. Load the toilet paper the right way. Please do it so you could save me.
Do you know where this was spurned from? Is this something like you load it the wrong way and your dad gave you a talking to and it's, forever secured in your mind?
I can't place it to one particular moment. It's just, when you're doing your business, you have time to think about things. And so I'm one of these shower philosophers, right? And where all the great ideas come when you're either on the can or in the shower. And so, pre-smartphone, you either have to have a book or you gotta, just hunker down for the long haul sometimes, And in the event that you don't have some entertainment, I don't remember how old I was, but definitely pre like iPhone. I'm just looking at the thing and I'm just saying, I first of all, I couldn't find it. Right. So that's annoying. If you're somebody who's using toilet paper and you don't like make it obvious where to kind of grab the end and, begin the process, that's ridiculous. Have some, compassion for the next person in there. So I think there was a day where I couldn't find the end and because they were loading it from under. And I couldn't see where the thing was. And then that just like got me thinking, because again, I've got time to kill in that current situation. And I just said, yeah, this is stupid. And then, I started actually looking into it, to see like, am I crazy? Like this is a life hack that is empirically correct, right? There is no disputing this. There's like no argument that can be made against this, right? And I'm convinced that that's true after looking into this for a bit. So, come at me if you think otherwise. Like, you know where to find me. But you're wrong. I'm sorry.
So you're talking about how you would do this if, you're visiting a friend's place. Did you ever run into an occurrence where either through inebriation you came out verbally swinging, where they saw this and a kerfuffle ensued? Any stories of ramifications of your reasonings here?
I've, told people that I did it, where I'm just like, yo, get on the level. And very rarely does it ever amount to anything besides who cares. And
yeah, eye roll and confusion.
And I'm like, and of course, then I have my Larry David moment, and everybody's just like, okay, whatever. Like, this is a nothing burger. But I don't know. To me, it's just so obvious, right? It's non-negotiable, and so I've definitely confronted people about their choices. I tell my wife all the time, and it's like kind of become a running thing. I wonder sometimes if she like does it on purpose because she knows it rankles me. But every time I draw her attention to it, she just has this like kind of mischievous giggle that she goes to, and it makes me wonder, like, God, did she know, or is she just like happy that it's bothering me? It's tough. The Schadenfreude is real.
I believe the answer is yes.
Yes, and.
And with that, we're going to head to our second ad break, but don't go anywhere, because when we get back, Chris is going to enter the lightning round. This podcast is sponsored by Irrational Puppets. One of the easiest things you can do with your hands and a light source in a dark room. Over human history, millions of people have used Irrational Puppets to great enjoyment. With limitless possibility and no upfront costs, Irrational Puppets will have your hands busy forever. Or until the power comes back on. So what are you waiting for? The power to go out? Oh yeah, right. Okay. Well, but when it does, we'll see you and your Irrational Puppets on the wall. And we're back. Chris, are you ready to enter lightning round?
The lightning round?
I'm as ready as I probably can ever be, but we'll see.
All right, buckle your seatbelts and keep your arms inside the ride at all times. Chris, is there a price for you to give up your passion forever?
No.
Make the food or do the dishes?
Make the food. I mean, I tend to do the dishes anyway because, I'm not a savage, but make the food.
Did you ever cheat on a test in school?
Absolutely.
Would you rather have your inner monologue sound like Gilbert Gottfried or Fran Drescher?
Fran Drescher, for sure.
Pineapple on pizza or fist fight?
Fist fight. Come at me. Let's go.
You're having the best day of your life. What happens next? Another amazing thing or something terrible?
Another amazing thing. I'm having the best day of my life. I mean, why would I derail that?
Is professional wrestling cool or lame?
Very cool.
Nick Cage, best or worst ever?
Mixed bag. I think he's the best ever in terms of his life experience and meme ability. So take that how you will.
Are soups smoothies?
No.
Do you create your own thoughts or do you just listen to them?
Both.
Would you rather there was no line at the checkout or the fast food place always give you a large fry when you ordered a medium?
No line at the checkout. I'm now no longer a fry person, which might be sacrilegious, but
no longer a fry guy. Well, this is going to make this awkward. Cheese fries, an abomination or gift from God?
I will say cheese fries. I do like the idea of it. So I'm pro cheese fries, even if I will probably go into cardiac arrest if I eat them.
Album, shuffle, or playlist?
Album. I want to basically give credit where credit's due and consume what the artist intended as a large work.
Pulp Fiction or No Country for Old Men?
Pulp Fiction.
Is there such a thing as a perfect piece of art?
Not platonically, but to a specific person, yes.
Have you ever had a crush on a cartoon character?
I think we all went through a Jessica Rabbit phase, right?
Yes. If you should have. Are you out of touch, or is it the children who are wrong?
I think we're all out of touch and need to learn from each other.
Boo. What is more important, freedom or structure?
Man, so much for the lightning round. I would say structure begets freedom, if that makes sense.
Would you rather communicate only in emojis or never text again?
Only in emojis. Absolutely. I'm a big emoji proponent.
Would you rather have tentacle arms or kangaroo legs?
I feel like kangaroo legs would be better for my chosen work because tentacle arms, I can't really do anything with that.
No internet ever again, or the internet streams directly into your brain at all times?
No internet ever again, because I feel like we need a cultural reset.
This
anyway.
is just for you.
Oh, just for me.
Yes.
So the only internet that anybody can experience is just internal. So we can't like share the internet. Is that what you're getting at?
No. The devil comes up to you and gives you a proposition that either you never have internet or it goes directly into your brain.
Is it like the only thing I can experience if it's in my brain? Oh, so like I just live on the internet?
It's like that episode of Futurama where it's just constantly streaming.
Oh, fuck that. No internet ever again.
Would you rather be a human in a world of Muppets or a Muppet in a world of humans?
I mean, I think people think I'm more of a Muppet than a human, so I'm going to go with that.
Can confirm. Would you rather meet an extraterrestrial or a ghost?
Depends on who the ghost is, I would say. On average, I would say an extraterrestrial.
Muzak at all times that only you can hear, or a live studio audience that everyone hears?
Muzak. I mean, I can find joy in Muzak. I think being constantly observed would wig me out a little bit.
Surf or turf?
Surf, definitely. My father made me a seafood fan at a young age.
Would you rather have squeaky clown shoes for feet or a clown nose?
I think clown nose because I think the squeakiness wouldn't necessarily be a constant. Like you could use it when it's advantageous for you, more so than having it always be when you move around.
Could you eat 37 of your favorite food for $5,000 in a 1 hour time limit?
Funny you say this. I think that's the number of hot wings I ate once to try to get on a leaderboard at a restaurant in, I think Maryland, where they said, how many like blazing inferno wings can you eat? And there was a top 10 board. And if you can get on the board, your whole table eats for free. And I think I didn't get on the board, but I got somewhere in that vicinity before crapping out.
So that's a yes.
Maybe.
Well, congratulations. You've survived the lightning round.
Yes.
Woo! Now, as a reward, my gallant guest, I grant thee a lightning round question of your own to be echoed until we get bored of it.
Okay. Schrodinger's cat. Alive, dead, or both?
Like, well, so like, I mean, Schrodinger himself has been dead since 1961. So I'm going to guess that cat doesn't have that many more lives than him and is also dead at this point.
I think that's a fair bet. I guess if we're thinking about the premise of the experiment, like let's say it was being done now, not Schrodinger's specific cat, because it wasn't a literal cat, right?
Yeah.
There'd be some PETA people all over this, if you did this. Are you a quantum superposition sort of person, or are you it's in one state, it's either dead or alive and it just has to be observed?
I like the idea of both. That way I don't have to be, I feel like if you say it's alive, you're a moron. If you say it's dead, you're a pessimist. So I like saying both. That way I don't have to decide or be either. I can just kind of move on with my life.
Yeah, I mean, and I've been thinking about this a lot, actually, because, we got our cat in 2021, like pandemic cat. And this is sort of the first pet we've owned since I was a child. And I had a bad experience with pets growing up because, ours was really sick all the time and, it wasn't well treated and stuff. And so I wondered if like I had that baggage carry over, would I be that type of, cat parent and stuff? But, my wife's given me the full court press for years and years and years. And so finally I relent and I fall in love with this thing in like a half hour or something like this, And so it's gotten me, thinking, anytime I encounter cat stuff, period, it always makes me wonder. And so Schrodinger's cat is something I've always kind of revisited since then, because obviously, like, I understand why the thought experiment exists, right?
Sure.
The observable universe and stuff, talking about like quantum mechanics and things like this, I get it. But it's also made me think my answer to the question is going to be reflective of my sort of worldview. Like you said, like if you say that the cat's alive, you're a moron. If you say it's dead, you're a pessimist. Like, so it's gotten me thinking, sure, can I intellectually process that there is the possibility of like quantum states and stuff like this? I guess. I mean, it's still pretty above my pay grade, but it makes me think about sort of how I navigate the world a lot, where because I'm my father's son who, was always seeing sort of some ugly parts of society being a cop, right? He's, seeing that a lot, and it's informing his, worldview. Of course, some of that is going to slough off onto me, where I can sometimes be self-defeating. I could sometimes I could shut down, especially as an artist, right? Artists deal with this all the time of, well, what's the point of making this? Nobody's going to listen to it anyway. It's not going to go anywhere. Just shoot yourself in the foot,
Sure.
And so I've tried to sort of undo a lot of that programming over the years. And I've tried to be better about gassing myself up, about being hopeful, about being optimistic, despite the universe's attempts to make me wonder why the hell anything still works or anything. Seeing all of this evil in the world, seeing all of this, just stuff that's going wrong. It's easy to just kind of think that Schrodinger's cat is dead, right? It's so easy to get to that place. Especially given the fact that, even disregarding the sort of radioactive stuff in the box, the poison pill or whatever, like it was in the original experiment, you're putting a cat in a aluminum box, right? There's no way the thing is going to live just because it's going to suffocate, right? So you have all these societal factors and all this real world shit that's basically telling you that there's just no way that Schrodinger's cat is going to live, right? No way. Again, this is kind of getting outside of the quantum aspect of it, right? But you have to, at some point, realize, well, the Mayan calendar thing didn't pan out, and there's still things like, despite all this terrible shit that's happening in the world, there's still music, there's still family, there's still the things that bring you joy, there's still peanut butter and pickle sandwiches, there's still all of this stuff, in spite of all of the the curveballs and roadblocks that the universe is throwing up to sort of stymie mankind. And you have to get to a place where you can believe that Schrodinger's cat is alive. You know, you have to try, because if you don't, if everybody checks out and everybody stops believing that it's possible, then nothing great happens. Everybody gives up, and then all of our worst nightmares come true. So I am trying very hard to be believing in Schrodinger's cat living, because my cat's living. I know my cat is going to die someday, but I have to believe that the cat is going to live for as long as I'm observing it.
All right, man. Anything you want to plug, shout outs you'd like to give, or places people can find you or your content as we bring this awesome episode to a close?
Just again, to reiterate some of the people I brought up earlier, my school music department chair, Joe Phillips. Again, I've shouted him out on other things in the past, but thank you as always. I wouldn't be here without your guidance and all that. Teachers I've had along the way, Chris Rouse, my composition teacher I brought up, Mary Anthony Cox, my ear training teacher, who basically, taught you stuff, but also like how to stand up straight, look people in the eye, like all that stuff. People I've collaborated with, have been just a joy to work with, and, I look forward to doing more stuff with them. As far as where to find me, you could find me on Instagram at Monster KAPICA. You can go to my website to hear, some of my music. You could book a session with me, chriskapica.com. If you want to check out the college that I run, it's called California College of Music. It's in Pasadena. So you can go to ccmla.edu. If you want to follow them on Instagram, it's at ccmla official. And we're doing lots of cool stuff. We have an event on Thursday. I don't know when this is airing, but
should be airing on the 31st.
Okay, then you're gonna miss it. So it sucks for you. But check us out. We got a lot of cool things going on. We got a lot of talented people in the building. So if you're ever thinking about getting to the next level in your musicianship, check us out. We're doing a lot of exciting work there.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Chris.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Chris, for being my guest today. And a special thanks to my editor, Richard Ashford, and my composer, Joshua Gibbons. And thank you. Yeah, you, listening at home, or you found time to appreciate this. Time is really the most precious commodity we have, and I appreciate you spending yours with us. And if you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe, like, or just share it with a friend. Every little bit helps. Or if you already have and are out of episodes to listen to, don't worry. We put out a new episode every Monday at midnight on SoundCloud, YouTube, Spotify, and iTunes at Passionate People and Preposterous Peeves Podcast. And a very special thanks are due to our patrons, Sabella Yellow. And if you'd like to join said illustrious ranks and have your name read aloud, just head on over to patreon.com/Passionate People and Preposterous Peeves Podcast. And remember, folks, if days are numbered and songs are sung, at the end of the day, I think we've all won. So please stick around, because great things have only just begun.